When a dedicated teacher first noticed a quiet child wearing the same thick gray jumper, her heart nearly stopped. What seemed like a simple wardrobe choice turned out to be a glimpse into something far darker. One look at the child's bruised wrist would set off a chain of events that threatened not only the girl's safety, but the teacher's convictions about right and wrong. This is a story of betrayal, resilience, and the relentless fight for justice. Before we begin, let us know where you're tuning in from, and if you believe the truth should always come to light, be sure to like and subscribe for more. It was 91 degrees the day Harper finally decided something was wrong. Even by the local standards, which often included sweltering afternoons and restless kids, the heat felt unbearable. The sun radiated off every surface, baking the grass until it seemed brittle, the air too thick to breathe comfortably. At recess, children ran wild with sweaty brows and dust-streaked shirts, fueling their play with the kind of high-octane energy only youth could sustain under such punishing conditions. Harper watched them from her usual spot on a shaded bench near the yard's boundary. She could tell which students were likely to cause trouble by who was gathering in secretive huddles, or which ones were about to burst into tears after having a toy taken. She prided herself on noticing everything, every scraped knee, every fraying friendship, every potential meltdown that might require an adult's gentle intervention. She believed the key to being a good teacher's assistant was vigilance. Children weren't always able to articulate their needs, so it often came down to reading body language and small shifts in behavior. If you paid attention, the signs were always there. That afternoon, however, her gaze landed on Lacey. The young girl sat neatly on a wooden bench near the bright red climbing frame. She was wearing the same thick gray jumper she had worn every day since the start of the school term. Long sleeves engulfed her thin arms, the fabric pooling at her wrists. Even from a distance, Harper could see the sweat beading around the edges of Lacey's hairline. Everyone else was fanning themselves with worksheets, dunking their heads under the drinking fountain, or rolling up their shirt sleeves. But Lacey remained still, legs crossed, eyes locked on some distant point as if she was trying to shrink out of existence. Harper rose and walked to her, weaving carefully between running children. When she reached the bench, she crouched down, doing her best to appear non-threatening. Lacey looked at her with large eyes that stayed devoid of the usual childlike curiosity. It was as if she had already seen too much for her age. "Hey, Lacey," Harper said softly, "aren't you hot in that jumper?" The girl's voice came out almost inaudibly. "No, I'm not hot." Harper watched a bead of sweat trickle down Lacey's temple. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice gentle. "It's scorching out here. You know you can take your jumper off if you want to." Lacey's eyes flickered. "She says I get sick if I take it off too much," she murmured. Harper frowned. "Who says that?" But before Lacey could answer, the shrill bell rang, signaling the end of recess. Children scrambled across the yard in a chaotic stampede, leaving dust in their wake. Lacey stood, adjusted the jumper sleeves, and joined the line filing back into the classrooms. Harper stood there for a moment, the heat pressing on her shoulders like a physical weight. A sense of unease took root in her stomach, a faint voice in her mind warning that this wasn't just a quirky child's preference for thick clothing. Something else was going on, and though Harper couldn't put her finger on it yet, she resolved to keep watch. Inside, the classroom was a whirlwind of bustling energy as the students settled for afternoon lessons. Lacey sat at a far table near the windows. She chose a seat in the corner, just as she always did, as if she wanted to minimize her presence in any space she occupied. As Harper walked by, she noticed how stiffly the girl sat, her posture a bit too rigid for a child of that age. Other students, some half out of their seats, some twisting around to talk to their friends, exuded a natural restlessness. Lacey, by contrast, seemed governed by an invisible rule demanding her absolute stillness. It continued that way for the rest of the day. At one point, Harper tried to approach Lacey again, asking if she needed help with an art project, but the girl simply shook her head, eyes downcast. During a short reading session, Harper caught sight of Lacey glancing around the classroom as if to ensure she wasn't being watched. Then the girl tugged the jumper's sleeves even longer, hiding her hands. Harper felt a bolt of suspicion race through her mind. She wondered if there were bruises, cuts, or some other injury Lacey was trying to conceal. The thought unsettled her. When the final bell rang, the children gathered their belongings. Parents and guardians arrived in clusters, greeting one another with nods and polite conversation, forming a steady crowd at the school's main gate. Harper, who usually helped keep the line organized, found her eyes wandering through the group, searching for Lacey's mother. The girl had mentioned she when talking about the jumper. Perhaps it was her mother who insisted Lacey wear it. Lacey slipped quietly into the swirling tide of children, her gray jumper an odd sight amid the bright summer dresses and short-sleeved shirts. Harper walked to the gate, scanning for a woman who might approach Lacey, perhaps someone wearing a tense expression. Instead, a man in heavy work boots strode past the clusters of parents, ignoring their greetings. Lacey's face was unreadable as he reached for her hand. "You ready?" he asked, voice clipped. Lacey nodded, stared at the ground, and let him lead her away. The man didn't look at Harper or any other teacher. Harper watched them go, something in the pit of her stomach twisting tighter. A few days passed and Lacey's habit of wearing the jumper persisted. Children continued to dash about at recess in sweat-soaked clothes, but Lacey quietly perched on the bench, always in that stifling garment. Harper approached her during lunch break, hoping maybe a casual conversation could glean more details. "You know," Harper began, offering Lacey half of her sandwich, "if it's a comfort thing, I understand. Sometimes we hold on to clothing or objects that make us feel safe. But you can tell me if you need help. I'm here." Lacey took a small bite of the sandwich, though she barely made eye contact. "I'm not hot," she repeated. It was the same mechanical line she'd delivered before, and Harper sensed it was something the child had been taught to say. But Lacey's words trailed off there. She lapsed into silence and Harper didn't push. As an assistant, she had to be cautious not to overstep professional boundaries. Yet her gut was screaming at her that this wasn't right. Lacey's reluctance to discuss anything, her unwillingness to remove the jumper, and her meek acceptance of whatever command she'd been given. These details painted a disturbing picture. Harper resolved to talk to the teacher she assisted, Ms. Nguyen, a warm but pragmatic woman who had been teaching for nearly 20 years. Later that day, once the students had gone home, Harper stayed behind, helping Ms. Nguyen straighten up the classroom. Stray crayons and bits of paper littered the floor. A few reading books lay scattered on desks. The air smelled like pencil shavings and eraser dust, a comforting aroma to educators who spent their days among the hustle and chatter of children. "Ms. Nguyen," Harper began hesitantly, placing a small stack of picture books into a cupboard, "can I ask you something about Lacey?" Ms. Nguyen glanced up from the supply closet. "Sure, what's on your mind?" "She's been wearing that same gray jumper every day no matter how hot it gets," Harper explained. "I tried asking her if she's uncomfortable, but she insists she's fine. Still, I can't shake the feeling there's something else going on." Ms. Nguyen nodded. "I've noticed it too. I figured it might be a comfort item. Some children who've experienced trauma latch onto a piece of clothing or a toy. It can be a way to feel safe or in control." Harper sighed. "That's what I thought. But I see signs. She's withdrawn. She's methodical in strange ways, like how she uses cling film to wrap even the smallest items. She doesn't want to reveal her arms. I suspect there might be bruises or worse, though I haven't seen any yet. Something's off." Ms. Nguyen's face softened. She trusted Harper's instincts and respected her commitment to the students. "We can keep a closer watch," she said, "but at this point we have nothing concrete to report. We need actual evidence if we're going to involve Child Protection Services. Meanwhile, we can keep track of any odd behavior, any potential signs of abuse." "I just feel like if we wait for something big to happen, it might be too late," Harper whispered, thinking about all the stories she'd heard on the news about children slipping through the cracks. Ms. Nguyen reached out and put a comforting hand on Harper's shoulder. "I understand. I'll keep my eyes open as well. We'll do the best we can. But we can't push too aggressively without more reason, or we risk alienating her. Right now, Lacey needs to feel that school is a safe space." Harper agreed, though unease continued to settle in her chest. She started a small log in a spiral notebook, detailing every instance of strange behavior she noticed, every time Lacey mentioned something about she, or looked frightened. Nothing might come of it, but at least Harper would have a record if matters escalated. As the days stretched into a week, the sweltering heat showed no sign of letting up. Lacey continued to wear the jumper, kept to herself, and rarely participated in group activities unless she was forced to. She had little presence among her peers either. The other children mostly let her be, as though they sensed she stood behind an invisible boundary no one dared cross. Then one day, as Harper was tidying up the lost property box, a large, worn cardboard trunk in the hallway, she noticed Lacey standing behind her, rummaging through the items. The box contained everything from missing socks to battered sweatshirts left behind after gym class. Lacey hunched over, her small shoulders tense. "Hey, Lacey," Harper said gently. "Did you lose something?" The girl froze as if she'd been caught red-handed. Slowly, she turned around, gripping a small hoodie in her fist. It was one of those cheap promotional hoodies, bright purple with a faded logo. I was just looking, she said, her eyes darting to the floor. She attempted to stuff the hoodie into her backpack, but Harper's presence had interrupted her. It's okay, you can tell me, Harper said, stepping closer. She kept her tone calm, not wanting to frighten the child. Is that yours? Lacey clutched it tighter. It's no one's. It's just lost. No one wants it. Harper's voice remained gentle. I know we keep lost items here. If someone doesn't claim them by the end of the month, sometimes they get donated to charity. Were you looking for something like this? Lacey shrugged. I just need it in case mine gets blood on it again. Harper's blood ran cold. What did you say? She asked, her voice catching. Nothing, Lacey muttered, suddenly retreating. She dropped the hoodie, grabbed her backpack and fled down the hallway, leaving Harper in stunned silence. Harper's mind swarmed with 100 interpretations of that chilling remark. Blood on her jumper. Was this a reference to some kind of injury? A nosebleed maybe? Or something more sinister? She felt an urgent need to report this to the safeguarding lead, Ms. Brady, who managed child welfare concerns at the school. Yet experience told Harper that Ms. Brady often focused on tangible proof before escalating matters, and Lacey's mention of blood didn't necessarily confirm abuse. Still, Harper wanted to try. She scheduled a meeting for the following day, determined to ensure someone higher up was aware of the situation. That same afternoon, she discovered a new clue. She was tidying the staff kitchen when she spotted Lacey huddled beside the sink, rummaging through drawers of plastic wrap. The girl was alone, presumably waiting for an after-school club to start or for her father to pick her up. Harper watched quietly for a moment as Lacey tore squares of cling film. One square she used to wrap half a sandwich. Another to wrap a pencil. Another for a small ripped-up drawing she tucked inside. The process was meticulous. Lacey's fingers moved with the kind of precision born from routine. Hey Lacey, Harper said, stepping forward. What are you doing? Lacey nearly dropped the cling film, startled. I was just wrapping these things, she explained in a small voice. She held up the objects, food, stationery, a piece of paper, each sealed in a plastic cocoon. Why so much cling film? Lacey's eyes were blank. Things last longer when they're wrapped up, she said. That's what he says. Who's he? Harper asked, voice gentle. My dad, Lacey replied. A tiny crack of emotion flickered across her face, but she quickly turned away, refusing to elaborate. In the silence, Harper felt the gravity of that moment. Lacey had revealed a sliver of her home life. It might have been nothing. Or it might have been everything. That night, Harper couldn't shake her growing sense of dread. She replayed Lacey's words in her head. Things last longer when they're wrapped up, in case mine gets blood on it again. She wanted to do more to protect this child, but she was bound by the procedures that required caution and documentation. She told herself that alerting the safeguarding lead was the correct step, that it was better than doing nothing at all. The next morning, after attendance and the usual bustle of children removing coats and chattering about cartoons, Harper found Ms. Brady in her office. Stacks of files and forms crowded the small space, the walls pinned with policies and bulletins about child welfare. Ms. Brady, a well-intentioned woman in her 50s, frowned sympathetically as Harper recounted everything. The jumper, the rummaging in the lost property box, Lacey's cryptic comments. I get it, Ms. Brady said, inhaling deeply. But it's all very circumstantial. Yes, it's suspicious. Yes, it could hint at something. But I can't just call child services based on a feeling. Harper felt a spark of frustration. But Lacey's behavior is so different from every other student. She's constantly wearing the jumper, even in this heat. She's talking about bruises and blood. She's collecting extra clothing. And it's not just that. She's obviously scared. Ms. Brady reached over her desk for a pen, flipping open a standard reporting form. We can log the concerns, she said, and if you see anything else, anything that definitively points to abuse, we'll have grounds to act. But for now, we can't go looking for ghosts, as they say. Pushing too hard might cause more harm than good if we're wrong. Harper tried to keep her composure. And what if we're right? What if there's abuse going on? Isn't it worth investigating? Ms. Brady gave her a long look. Harper, I know you care deeply about these kids and I applaud that. But we have protocols for a reason. We need verifiable evidence. I'll keep an eye out too. In the meantime, we can ask Lacey, gently, if she wants to speak with a counselor. That might encourage her to open up. But we have to follow the process. Harper left the office with a tight knot in her chest. She couldn't shake the feeling that every day they waited, the more danger Lacey might be in. It wasn't that she believed Ms. Brady was indifferent. Far from it. The woman cared about the students, but her hands were tied by the very system meant to protect them. You needed proof or it was just suspicion. And suspicion alone wouldn't stop a child from being hurt. The sense of urgency lingered all through that day. Harper kept an especially close eye on Lacey, noticing each small detail that might offer insight. At lunchtime, she saw how Lacey chose to eat alone in the corner of the cafeteria, letting her food get cold as she meticulously peeled an orange, then rewrapped it with cling film after taking only a couple of bites. During math class, Lacey's workbook pages were frayed, as if they'd been ripped out and taped back in multiple times. Harper saw faint pencil lines crossing out entire problems, not just single answers. It reminded her of the earlier conversation with Lacey about, if you mess up, you rip it out. The phrase echoed in Harper's mind like a warning siren. She tried to raise her concerns again with Ms. Nguyen. Even if Ms. Brady doesn't think we have enough, we still have to keep track of these details, she insisted. The teacher agreed and suggested they approach Lacey more carefully, maybe invite her to help with an art project or to read a story with Harper one-on-one. Sometimes children opened up in those quiet, focused moments. They tried. During Art Week, a big event at the school that encouraged kids to get messy with paint, glue, and glitter, Harper found a golden opportunity to encourage Lacey to roll up her sleeves. The entire class was donning aprons or paint smocks, pushing up their shirt sleeves to keep from staining their clothes. Lacey approached the painting station, but when Harper offered her an apron, the girl stiffened. "Let's roll your sleeves up so you can keep the paint off your jumper," Harper said softly. "We'll just fold them a little." No, Lacey gripped the ends of her sleeves, knuckles turning white. "Just a little bit," Harper coaxed. "So the paint doesn't get." "No." Lacey yanked her arm away, stumbling back. The sleeve slipped up for a fraction of a second, revealing a cluster of dark purple bruises that looked alarmingly like finger marks. Raised welts formed a haunting pattern on her pale skin. Harper's breath caught and Lacey noticed. Terror flared in the child's eyes. "She says I'm lucky she didn't use the hanger this time," Lacey muttered, her voice wavering with something between anger and fear. Harper felt her stomach lurch. A wave of horror and fury mingled within her, making her momentarily dizzy. She quickly drew Lacey aside, away from the other children, and tried to speak gently, though her heart pounded. "Who did that to you?" Harper whispered, though she already suspected the answer. Lacey swallowed hard, her face twisting. For a moment, it looked like she might finally disclose all the ugly truths locked inside her. Her eyes brimmed with tears she wouldn't let fall. "I can't, she'll say it's my fault," she choked out. Then she clammed up, the tears drying in her eyes as her expression morphed into a silent plea. Harper couldn't stand by anymore. This was the concrete evidence they needed. Welts shaped like finger marks, bruises that resembled the strong grip of an adult. She documented everything. She took Lacey immediately to the school nurse, who could at least verify the bruises. The nurse's face turned pale when she saw the child's injuries. Within an hour, the police were called. But bureaucracy moved slowly. Harper found herself in a small meeting room, describing every detail to a middle-aged detective named Sawyer. He wore a neat shirt and carried himself with an air of casual confidence, a wry half-smile perpetually on his face as though he was about to crack a joke. Yet he listened carefully as Harper laid out the story, flipping through the evidence folder she had meticulously assembled. The notes, the drawings, the observations, and finally the photos of those haunting bruises. "You've done your homework," Detective Sawyer remarked, setting the folder aside. "That's good, it'll help. Child abuse cases can be tricky. A lot of families close ranks. Sometimes the kid recants under pressure. We need as much as we can get." Harper felt a pang of desperation. "But you believe me, right? You believe Lacey? This isn't just a misunderstanding or some bruise from roughhousing on the playground." The detective's smile faded. "I've seen real abuse," he said quietly. "The question is whether we can prove it. Don't misunderstand, I'm not calling you a liar. But we'll need to talk to the child, the parents, neighbors. Build a case. Meanwhile, I suggest you keep an eye on Lacey at school. If you notice anything else, let me know. But rest assured I'll be looking into it." Harper exhaled. It was a relief to be heard. "Thank you," she said. I can't let this go." Sawyer tapped the folder. "And I won't either." Then he gave her a small, reassuring nod. "Kids can be weird. They say a lot of things. But those bruises? That's different. I've got enough here to start poking around." Harper's anxiety didn't dissipate, but at least now she had a sense of motion, of movement toward unveiling the truth. If the father or someone else in Lacey's home was inflicting these injuries, they would soon face consequences. She clung to that hope, though she also knew how slowly the wheels of justice could turn. But Lacey didn't come to school the next day, nor the day after. Each empty seat in the classroom only fueled Harper's worry. Had someone at home discovered she'd told a teacher? Was she being punished? Or had the father simply decided to keep her out, fearing an investigation? By the fourth day, Harper was out of her mind with concern. She called Detective Sawyer. "She hasn't shown up all week," she said, panic evident in her tone. "We need to do something." "I'm on it," he assured her. "I tried visiting the residence, but there was no answer. They might be out of town. I put in a request to check hospitals in the area. No luck yet. I'll keep pushing." That was the day Harper found a note tucked inside a random permission slip at the back of Lacey's desk. It was a hastily scribbled message in a child's uneven handwriting. "If you told, she'll say it's my fault. But thank you. I'm trying to be good. Please don't stop looking." Harper's heart twisted. She recognized Lacey's writing. The note confirmed her worst fears. Lacey was in real danger and she knew it. Harper drove straight to the police station with it, ignoring the usual protocol of going through the school. This was an emergency. Detective Sawyer met her in the hallway, a coffee in one hand, car keys in the other. "I was just about to call you," he said, waving her over to a quieter spot. "It looks like your instincts were right. I checked the father's employment records, followed up on some leads. There's a pattern of suspicious injuries in Lacey's medical file, going back a couple of years. The mother is out of the picture, walked out months ago. Neighbors report hearing yelling. CPS has a file, but it's inconclusive. So yes, we have enough to move forward." Harper felt a wave of anger that the system had known at least some of this and yet done so little. "What now?" she asked. Sawyer exhaled. "I've got a team ready to do a welfare check. But we need to find them at home. If no one answers, we can't just break down the door without a warrant unless we have reason to believe there's an immediate threat." He eyed the note. "But we might have enough now." "Let's go," Harper said, surprising even herself with the firmness in her voice. "You're not exactly authorized to come," Sawyer noted, raising an eyebrow. But then he shrugged. "You're the reason I'm onto this in the first place, so maybe it's good if you can talk to the child." Harper nodded, adrenaline surging. She followed Sawyer out of the station to his unmarked car. The ride to Lacey's house felt like it took hours, though it was only 15 minutes of winding through suburban streets. Each turn made Harper's stomach clench tighter. What if they were too late? What if Lacey was badly hurt? She tried to imagine what she might find and hated every grim possibility. They pulled up to a small, neatly maintained house on a quiet street. A modest garden decorated the front yard, and the curtains were drawn. No car was in the driveway. Harper's pulse thundered in her ears as Detective Sawyer knocked on the door. There was no immediate response. He knocked again, more insistently. Still nothing. "Maybe they're not home," he muttered. "Or he's hiding." Harper refused to move away from the front step. She peered through a narrow gap in the curtains but couldn't see much. Everything looked shadowy inside. Then down the street, headlights sliced through the early evening light. A battered sedan turned the corner and pulled up in front of the house. "That must be him," Sawyer murmured. A man in heavy boots climbed out, shutting the car door with more force than necessary. He looked exhausted, deep lines etched into his face. His brow furrowed when he saw Sawyer's presence at the door. Harper recognized him from that day at the school gate. "Evening, sir," Sawyer said, stepping off the porch. "Detective Sawyer. We'd like to ask a few questions, check on your daughter." The man's eyes flickered in a way that made Harper uneasy. "She's asleep. We've had a long day." "I'm sure you have," Sawyer said, his tone composed. "Mind if we come in anyway? Just to confirm she's all right." "You got a warrant?" the father asked, crossing his arms. He looked at Harper with a sneer. "What's she doing here? She's a teacher, not a cop." Sawyer spread his hands in a non-threatening gesture. "No warrant yet, but we can get one if you make it necessary. We received a report of injuries on your daughter. We have reason to believe she might be in danger. Let's keep this simple and civil." The man's eyes narrowed. "There's no danger. She's fine. I don't appreciate you coming to my house like this. Get off my property." Sawyer took a single step forward. "Sir, if you continue to obstruct, we'll be forced to escalate. I really don't think you want to do that." The man rolled his eyes dramatically, then turned and walked into the house without another word. He left the door slightly ajar, which set Harper on edge. She exchanged a tense glance with Sawyer. Then they heard it, A scream, faint but unmistakable, coming from inside. High-pitched and terrified. Sawyer didn't hesitate. He shoved the door open, stepping inside with a sense of urgency that matched Harper's pounding heart. She followed right behind him, ignoring every rule that said she should stay outside. The interior of the house was dim and smelled faintly of stale air, like windows seldom opened. A flicker of light came from the kitchen, where they found Lacey cowering by the fridge. Her jumper sleeve was half torn and her eyes were wide in terror. Her father gripped a long wooden spoon, cracked down the middle as he stood over her. His rage-filled eyes swung toward Harper and Sawyer when they burst in. "Move!" he yelled, brandishing the broken utensil like a weapon. He lunged at Harper, but Sawyer intervened, catching his arm and twisting it back with practiced force. Lacey stumbled, nearly tripping over her own feet as Harper rushed forward to shield her. The man thrashed wildly in Sawyer's grip. "This is your fault," he roared at Lacey. "You ruin everything." The terror in the child's eyes was more than Harper could bear. She wrapped her arms protectively around Lacey and quickly ushered her into the hallway, away from the chaos. She could hear the sounds of a struggle behind her, Sawyer wrestling the man who cursed and spat in anger. The commotion was loud enough that neighbors soon turned on porch lights, and within minutes, sirens blared down the street. Police cars arrived, painting the front windows in ominous streaks of red and blue. Officers poured into the house. One took Lacey gently aside, while others helped Sawyer subdue the father. The man was cuffed, sweaty and furious, spewing denials and insults in the same breath. Lacey trembled so violently that Harper thought her tiny body might shatter. But she was alive. She was here. 10 minutes later, the father was led outside under arrest. Harper stood next to Lacey, who clung to her arm as if it were a lifeline. She caught a glimpse of the man's face through the open door, twisted in hateful rage. A part of her wanted to scream at him, to demand answers, to make him see the harm he'd caused. But the child beside her needed calm, reassurance, safety. Officers spoke in hushed tones, conferring about the next steps. Detective Sawyer approached them with a grim but resolved expression. "We'll take him in," he said, "and arrange for emergency placement for Lacey. He's not going to walk free anytime soon." Harper felt tears prick her eyes. Relief, horror, and a fierce protectiveness swirled inside her chest. She squeezed Lacey's hand gently. "You're going to be safe now," she whispered. "I promise." Lacey looked up, eyes wet with tears. "Thank you," she whispered back. Her voice was small, but a fragile hope glimmered in it. In that moment, Harper believed that all the doubts, the frustration, and the fear had been worth it. She had gone looking, refusing to ignore the signs. And at long last, Lacey was free. The end. Thank you so much for watching. If you believe the truth should always come to light, remember to like and subscribe for more stories just like this one.